Jim didn't remember his parents. He didn't know what they were like and where they had gone. The boy lived in an orphanage. He had been adopted 5 times, but each time not for long. They always brought him back to the orphanage. Unfortunately, it wasn't uncommon for foster parents to give children back to the orphanage. But 5 times. And it wasn't Jim's fault. All of the foster parents couldn't even clearly explain what was wrong with him. Their explanation was very simple: Jim didn't fit into their family life. When Jim was adopted for the first time, he was not yet 3 years old. He didn't even remember how he ended up in the orphanage, and he considered himself the biological son of a serious and strong father and a cheerful mother who smelled very sweet. The boy loved his parents and was sure they loved him too. Because it couldn't have been otherwise, he and his parents often went to the park on weekends, where they would ride the swings, ponies, and buy all kinds of sweets, ice cream and cotton candy. It was a wonderful time, and in the evening they often had guests over. Mom would dress Jim in fancy clothes and introduce him to the guests. "Meet my smart and handsome little son. He's really smart for his age, and it's not like we force him to study. Do you think I read him bedtime stories? No, he takes my books and asks me to read to him. For example, last night we were reading poetry. Right. Jim didn't remember asking to read any poems, nor did he remember his mother reading to him at all. He didn't remember that, but he saw that the guests appreciated the fact that he was so smart and that he liked poetry so much. So he proudly agreed with his mom. The guests praised the child, gave Jim sweets, and then he went off to his room. And then something strange happened. The boy could not understand that, even though by that time he had already turned 4 years old. One day his father said to him, "Jim, I have something to tell you. You're not a baby anymore. I hope you'll understand. I'm listening to you, Father," the boy replied. Jim was a child, but he immediately realized that his father was about to tell him something very bad. "Mom and I are about to have a baby. I mean, the baby already exists, but our baby is living in Mommy's belly for now, but will be born soon. I'm so happy. I'm going to have a little brother." Jim was overjoyed. He had always dreamed of having a little brother. "Well, yeah," his father hesitated. "But the thing is, for now, you'll have to live at the orphanage we took you from 2 years ago. Do you remember that place?" The boy didn't remember what an orphanage was and didn't understand what it meant at all. "Is it like daycare?" Jim asked in confusion. "Yeah, something like that. The only difference is that we pick you up from daycare every evening, and we wouldn't be able to pick you up from the orphanage. You'd have to stay there for a while, but it won't be for long, about a year or so." "Why?" "Because I have to work. I don't have time. And Mom might have to spend some time in the hospital. There will be no one to take care of you. Don't worry, there are many kids at the orphanage. You'll have fun there. I promise you." The father answered Jim's question. "I don't want to go to the orphanage," the boy mumbled, holding back tears. The boy felt scared for the first time in his life. He wanted to cry. "I want to stay with you. I don't want to go anywhere." "Enough," his father answered. "Don't even think of crying. You'll upset your mom with it. It's not good for her to be stressed now. I'll take you to the orphanage tomorrow and everything will be fine." Jim hoped his mom would protect him. He was sure she wouldn't let him go anywhere. His dad was always strict and cold, but his mom loved him very much, and she would never let him go. So he ran to her room. "Mommy, I won't cry, and I promise to be obedient. I will do anything you say, and I will love my little brother. Just don't take me to the orphanage." "Jim, don't cry. Daddy has explained everything to you." His mother pulled the boy away with unexpected coldness. "I can't babysit you now. You must understand that. Tomorrow, your father will take you to a very good place. You'll be better off there than at home." "I don't want to go to a good place. I want to be with you here." Jim started crying. At that moment, his father entered the room. "Jim, I told you not to upset Mom. Go to your room and go to bed." He roughly grabbed the boy's arm and pushed him out of the bedroom. Jim overheard his father talking irritably to his mom. "That's how your bizarre idea ended up. I told you not to take kids from the orphanage. I told you we'd have our own kids, and we wouldn't have time for strangers." "Yeah, you were right. I made a mistake," his wife replied guiltily. "But please, take him to the orphanage tomorrow yourself. I don't want to go there. They must understand me. I'm pregnant, and such events are not good for my condition right now." The next morning, his father took Jim to the orphanage. There the boy did not want to let go of the man whom he considered his father for 2 years. He ran after him along the corridor, but it was useless. As he left, the man didn't even look back. For several days, Jim constantly looked out of the window. He didn't eat anything, couldn't sleep, and cried all the time. The boy waited for his parents, but they never came back. But in general, the orphanage was not that bad. Gradually, Jim made friends with other kids who had lived in the orphanage for a long time or who had always lived there. They explained to him that his parents would probably never come to pick him up again. "It's always like that. They promise to come back for you, but they just forget about you. It's okay, maybe other people will come and adopt you," his new friends said. "I don't want to go to someone else. I want to go to my parents." Jim cried, but gradually, he calmed down. "Maybe you were right, guys. Maybe there will be other parents, and they'll be better than the previous ones." The new parents came to the orphanage pretty soon, about 6 months later. Usually, they are the ones who choose children, while the orphans should be happy to have any kind of parents. And in any case, it's not the children who make the final decision. Another couple liked Jim because the boy will turn 5 soon, which means he's not a toddler anymore and won't take up too much time. But they still can educate him the way they want to. Besides, he spent 2 years living with another family, which makes him more suitable for a family. The caregivers praised the boy, saying that he was smart, sociable, and organized. But Jim didn't like his new parents. They were not young, looked too serious, and were not dressed as nice and fashionable as his previous parents. Or maybe it's better that way. If they don't look like his previous parents, then they won't abandon him. Especially since Brianna, the orphanage manager, had spoken to the adoptive parents and explained that they had to be attentive and gentle with the boy. He was already abandoned by another adoptive family recently. It was a serious trauma for the child. "I hope that your relationship with him will be different." The new father looked out the window indifferently during the entire conversation with Brianna, while his new mother nodded seriously and said she understood everything. When the new parents took Jim away, Brianna shook her head and said to the orphanage teacher and caregiver, "I'm not sure if I did the right thing. These people seemed unemotional and indifferent to me." "Don't worry," the teacher objected. "I think they're just shy, well-mannered and serious people. They have excellent characteristics. It's a wealthy family. I trust such serious couples much more than anyone else," the caregiver added. "It's weird when the foster parents start hugging and kissing the child from the first meeting. Very often such couples return the children to the orphanage. Like Jim's first parents. Remember them? They told him he was their beloved dear son. But when they found out about the pregnancy, they immediately brought him back to the orphanage. But this couple looks more serious. Apparently, they are tired of not having children, and maybe this is their last chance." "I really hope you're right," Brianna sighed, and the women headed off to their workplaces, and Jim headed off to his new home with his new parents. Oddly enough, his new father drove him and his mom home, said goodbye, wished them luck, and went off somewhere. "Dad has a lot of things to do. He will come later," the woman explained and let the boy into their apartment, where she showed him his new room. It was small and clean, but kind of empty and boring. "I hope you're not hungry right now," the mother asked sternly. "No, I'm not," Jim sighed. He wasn't really hungry, but he hoped they had cooked him something delicious and unusual for such an occasion. "Okay, dinner will be at 7 o'clock. In the meantime, get used to your new room. Mom said, and worked out into the hallway. Jim sat down on a chair and didn't know what to do next. There was nothing to do, and he didn't feel comfortable in this apartment. He went to the kitchen for dinner, sat at the table, and stared at the plate in front of him. There was porridge which he didn't really like, but he had no choice. So he took a spoon and began to eat. The porridge was dry and even worse than at the orphanage. It was disgusting to eat this porridge, and even the milk in the glass was tasteless. "Jim, you ate almost nothing," the woman said. "This porridge is very good for your health. I'm sure they didn't cook this kind of porridge for you at the orphanage." "Yes, but I don't like porridge. I like French fries," Jim answered honestly. "Well, no, that's a very unhealthy food. I don't eat potatoes at all, especially French fries. Have you finished eating? Now brush your teeth and go to bed." In the morning, he didn't want to eat either. The boy looked at the plate in front of him with disgust. It was oatmeal, which he hated. Jim forced himself to eat a couple of spoons of that sticky, tasteless oatmeal, but he couldn't eat any more of it. Not even out of politeness. "You're just not used to this kind of food yet," the woman, whom the boy couldn't yet call Mom, said unhappily. "I'm sure they fed you junk food at the orphanage, so get used to eating healthy." Jim wanted not to eat but to cry. He wanted to go back to the orphanage. Of course, they rarely cooked French fries there. More often it was mashed potatoes, but it was still much tastier than this healthy food. "I don't understand why they adopted me," the boy thought. "She won't let me play. She won't let me watch TV. What is this woman going to do with me?" But it seemed she had no intention to do anything at all. She let him watch TV, but only for half an hour, and turned it off 30 minutes later, interrupting the cartoon at the most interesting part. "You can't watch a cartoon for more than half an hour. It's bad for your eyes," she said to Jim's timid protests. Then they walked in the park for an hour. That was boring too. They just walked hand in hand along the sidewalk. No ponies, no slides, no ice cream. By lunchtime, Jim was getting really hungry, but he got a plate of unsalted broth with breadcrumbs and braised cabbage with a pale piece of boiled chicken. This time he couldn't hold back the tears at the table. In the evening, he heard a woman complaining about him to someone on the telephone. "I don't know what they feed them in that orphanage. He should be happy to be adopted, but he's crying and doesn't want to eat anything. He probably likes French fries. I'm afraid soon he'll be demanding sausage and salted fish." "Yes, I'd like to have some sausage, and I'd love to go back to the orphanage." Jim thought through his tears. It's not a family. There's no one even to talk to. 2 weeks later, Jim returned to the orphanage, and this time there were no tears. On the contrary, he happily entered the playroom and enjoyed the familiar aromas from the kitchen. Brianna, having talked to the failed mother, realized that the boy was not happy in that family, and not just because of the healthy food Jim refused to eat. The problem was that this emotionless woman had no children, and she didn't know how to communicate not only with children but also with adults. It turned out that her husband didn't live with her either, but he came to the orphanage to sign the adoption relinquishment. And then he told Brianna, "You know, she doesn't need any children. She doesn't need anyone at all. Even I left her. I didn't have the strength to deal with her temper. She is a very stubborn person, unable to hear others, much less children. She's used to living her life the way she wants, and she's not willing to negotiate. Then let her live alone." Brianna only nodded her head in response. She really felt guilty for little Jim. Yes, according to their official information, this family was well off. But in reality, it was a nightmare for the boy. "Jim is a nice boy. We need to find a suitable family for him before it's too late. He's already 5 years old. We should do it before school so that he goes to an ordinary school instead of the orphanage school," Brianna reasoned, but she decided to choose the next family with more responsibility. Finally, she found such a family. They were friendly and cheerful, with 2 other adopted children, a brother and a sister, who were a little younger than Jim. This family didn't adopt the boy right away. First, they invited him to their house for a weekend to see how he would behave. But he didn't stay there for long either. "I'm sorry, but he's not suitable for our family. He's too quiet, sitting in the corner all the time. He only answers yes or no to any question and doesn't talk to anyone." A woman complained about Jim. "But a child has to get used to a new home. Don't you realize that?" Brianna said. "I thought you were experienced adoptive parents and knew how to communicate with children." "Yes, but we don't have time to wait for him to get used to it. That way we would exhaust ourselves and him." Jim's failed parents replied in embarrassment. "Besides, we have other children to deal with." After this unsuccessful attempt to find a family, Jim really changed. He began to sit alone in the corner more and more often and didn't want to communicate with other children. Everyone could see that the boy really needed support and a family. Why can't we find a good family that can give this boy a normal life? After all, he's really such a good boy. But he's so unlucky. Of course, he's not the first and won't be the last to be returned to the orphanage by his new parents. It happens to other kids too, unfortunately. People can be irresponsible and cruel, but Jim suffers more than anyone else. Soon another couple came to the orphanage. They seemed very responsible and serious about adopting a child. The husband was a musician, and his wife was a music teacher. They had been trying for years to get pregnant, but finally gave up and decided to adopt a child. They had one main requirement. The child must have an ear for music. "The child's appearance is not the most important thing for us. What's important to us is spiritual kinship and common interests, which is why we want to adopt an older boy so we can immediately see if he has potential in music." They could see that potential in Jim, for the boy did have a musical ear. But a month later, the foster dad was sitting in Brianna's office, blushing with embarrassment. "The boy has a really great ear for music, but he's unable to play any melody. It happens, and it can probably be fixed, but we should have started while he was an infant. But I don't know what to do with him now. You know, a child who can't play a single melody can't live in our family." After a while, a fifth family showed up. It wasn't enough for the childless couple to take care of their dog, so they decided to adopt a child. Jim enjoyed walking the husky, but suddenly it turned out that he was allergic to dog fur. Soon, this couple brought him back to their orphanage. "Please try to understand us. Jim is a wonderful boy, but we've had this dog for 5 years, and we can't get rid of the dog. But it's not right to torture the child either. He may have asthma because of our dog." Another failed parents explained with their eyes downcast. Jim was already almost 10 years old, and their orphanage workers decided not to show him to new couples anymore. They just didn't want to torture the boy. He was already studying at the orphanage school. He was a diligent and hard-working student, but he no longer believed in the possibility of happiness. Sometimes people adopted kids of his age, too. But when this happened, Jim didn't even rejoice for his friends or envy them. He simply waited for the children to be returned to the orphanage. Families often brought children back to the orphanage, and sometimes the situations were much worse than Jim's. He was really a very nice boy, but sometimes he fell into a despondency that he couldn't overcome on his own. "Jim, what's the matter with you?" Brianna asked. After a moment's silence, he answered, "You know, I keep thinking, what's wrong with me? Why did everyone abandon me? If I was abandoned by 1 or 2 families, it wouldn't be weird. But I was returned to the orphanage by 5 different families. Jim, there's nothing wrong with you, but rather with the foster parents. They're all adults, but they're completely irresponsible when it comes to making such an important decision. I'm guilty too. I didn't check the backgrounds of all these couples well enough. Unfortunately, I just don't have the time to check everything. Besides, every time someone is adopted, I feel so happy. Every time I truly believe that the child will finally find a loving family and that everything will be okay. But reality can be cruel. But it does happen that some children stay with their families forever, and they're happy and loved. Not all of them go back to their orphanage. Look at it from a different angle. Like you're the one giving up on those parents, not them giving up on you. Did you want to stay with that boring woman who's crazy about healthy eating? Or stay with those musicians dreaming of their own musical genius? No, those are not the kind of parents I would want to live with. But my first parents were nice. I'd want to live with them. I really love them. And I thought they were my real parents. I still can't believe they abandoned me, but their love and affection turned out to be fake. They pretended to love you. In reality, they were worse than all the other couples. Other families just weren't meant to be parents, while these foster parents ruthlessly abandoned you when they found out they were expecting their biological baby. I don't understand why they did that to you. Okay, let's not talk about sad things. Soon you will grow up, and you will create your own, real family. No, it's not that soon. Or maybe it'll never happen at all. I'm not sure I'll be able to start a family. Maybe I'm not destined to have a family. Even my biological parents abandoned me for some reason. And I can't even ask why, since I don't remember anything about them. Jim reflected sadly. Poor child. Brianna thought fearfully. I hope his sad experience will not lead him into serious trouble in the future. After all, he will grow up soon, for time flies very fast. Time passed quickly. Jim was already in the 3rd grade of the orphanage school. The school building was old and needed repair badly, but the city authorities stubbornly refused to allocate money for repairs. As a result, a serious problem with the sewage system occurred in the middle of the school year. The school had to be urgently closed for repairs, and the children had to temporarily attend regular sitter schools. Jim also became a student of such a school, attended by ordinary children who had families, and whose parents came to pick them up after classes. On the first day in the new school, one of the students asked Jim to be friends. It was strange, because usually everyone avoided orphans, considering them unworthy to communicate with normal children. But the boys turned out to have a common interest. It was math. They both loved solving the most difficult tasks and were the most active students in math classes. So Jim agreed to be friends with Alex. Okay, but I won't be at your school for long. When they fix our sewer system, I'll have to go back to the orphanage school. You'll go back to another school, not to another city. I know where your orphanage is. It's not far from my house. We'll be able to communicate later too. Do they let you leave the orphanage territory? Alex asked. Sometimes they let us leave the territory. Sometimes they don't. But I don't think anyone will forbid us to be friends. Especially if we don't misbehave. For example, we could go to the library together. Maybe your school has some books that our school doesn't have. Yes, I think that's possible. Would you be able to come over to my house sometimes? Ask your teachers or someone who can let you come to my place sometimes. By the way, my father has a PhD in physics and math, so there are more books at my house than in the library. Great. I guess they let me go to your house. Why not? We could also play Xbox. I got a new game, but it's not that interesting to play alone. When Jim returned to the orphanage after school, he shared his joy with Brianna. He already had a new friend who invited him over to his house to study and play Xbox. Can I visit him after school? We'll do homework and play Xbox a little. Besides, Alex's father is a scientist with a PhD in physics and mathematics. I promise I'll be back to the orphanage on time. It's just interesting to talk to a real scientist. Brianna allowed the boy to visit his new friend after school. After all, she clearly realized that Jim not only wanted to talk to a real scientist, but also just to spend some time in an ordinary house and feel the comfort of home. Of course, this can lead to new disappointments. What if one day they forbid their son to communicate with an orphan? Brianna decided that she should definitely talk to Alex's parents and explain Jim's situation. We have to be very gentle and careful with a boy who has suffered so much hardship in his life. He doesn't need any more disappointments in people, Brianna thought. Jim often came to visit Alex after school. The boy's father was rarely at home. He worked a lot, but his mother was always at home. This kind and cheerful woman who introduced herself as Anna, won the heart of the little guest not only by her friendliness, but also by the fact that on the very first day, she invited Jim to the table and served him a whole plate of his favorite food, French fries. Seeing how eagerly Jim ate it, she offered him an extra portion. "Thank you so much. It's my favorite food. They really cook it at the orphanage. They usually give us mashed potatoes. When I grow up, I'm going to eat French fries every day. Jim, you are always welcome in this house. I will cook French fries especially for you," Anna said. "And if you want, you can stay overnight. And tomorrow you and Alex will go to school together. Call the orphanage and ask if you can stay here." Jim called Brianna and asked for permission to stay at his friend's house overnight. But Brianna asked to talk to Alex's mom first. Anna confirmed that she suggested Jim stay overnight and added that Jim was always welcome in her house. "Yes, Jim can stay the night, but could you come to the orphanage for a conversation whenever it's convenient for you? I hope you understand. I am responsible for the children and am very worried about Jim. He can stay at your place tonight, but I have to explain the situation." Alex's mom agreed, and the next day she came to Brianna's office to talk. "Hello, Anna. Please take a seat. I want to talk to you about Jim. Do you know anything about his past?" "No. Is there something wrong with him?" the woman said worriedly. "The thing is, he's only 10, but he's already been through a lot of trouble. His biological mother abandoned him right after giving birth to him. 5 different families have tried to adopt Jim, and every time he was brought back to the orphanage. Just think about it. 5 times the boy had hoped for a normal life, but all of the couples brought him back because he wasn't suitable for them. It wasn't the boy's fault. It was just that all these people were irresponsible and even cruel. One couple kicked him out when they found out they were expecting a biological baby. Another family said he wasn't playing piano well enough. And one couple got rid of Jim because their dog was more precious to them than the child." "I can't believe it," Anna said. "I can't believe people can be so cruel. That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you. I don't want the boy to be disappointed and suffer again. Your son invited Jim over to play at your house, and you offered him to have dinner together with your family. But to Jim, that means so much more than just dinner. I realize you have no intention of adopting him, but you said he is always welcome in your house. Jim is just a kid and he might misunderstand that, but Jim is such a smart kid. My husband talked to him and he was surprised at his abilities. They are way above average." "Yes, I know, but that's not what we're talking about. Kids who live in an orphanage are a special type of people. For example, your son Alex can also visit someone's home and play with other children, and someone's parents can offer him dinner. But in the evening, the boy will go home to his parents, and Jim has nowhere to go. He can take your friendliness for something more, and the realization of that mistake will be very painful for him. But we will never forbid our son to communicate with Jim, and we will never forbid Jim to visit our home," Anna answered confidently. "Soon, the repairs at our school will be finished, and Jim will go back to school at the orphanage, so he will see Alex much less. I think we should give the boys their opportunity to decide for themselves how they will communicate further. After all, our school and the orphanage are in the same neighborhood, and the fact that the boys will attend different schools is not an obstacle to their friendship. That would be wonderful. But wouldn't an orphan be a problem for you? I mean, Jim lives in an orphanage, so he can't invite Alex over to his place. Only Alex can invite Jim to your house, which means you'd have a stranger in your house very often. It's not really comfortable. Besides, it's an extra expense. Even tea and lunch costs money." "What are you talking about? Like I said, Jim is always welcome in our house, and I am not going back on my word. Our family is well off, so a cup of tea won't bankrupt us, and neither will French fries, which is Jim's favorite food." Anna smiled. That was the end of Brianna and Anna's conversation. A month and a half later, the repairs at the orphanage school were finished, and Jim had to say goodbye to the teachers and friends from the sitter school, but not to Alex. They had agreed to visit each other. Jim got used to his friend's house long ago. But for Alex, visiting the orphanage was something new. At home, he told his parents about his impressions. It's not as bad as people say it is. But still, it's scary to think about how the children live there. Just imagine, they don't have their own rooms. They share a shower, everything is scheduled, and they can't just go into the kitchen and get something to eat from the fridge. I'm so happy to have you. I don't think I could survive in the orphanage. I'm so sorry Jim has to be there. Alex already knew that his friend had experienced several failed adoptions, and what impressed him the most was that Jim always talked about his ill-fated adventures with humor. He doesn't remember his first foster parents very well, but it's clear that they hurt him the most. He thought they were his real family, but suddenly they abandoned him. I wish I could find them and tell them everything I think about these cruel people. But Jim doesn't think about that at all. He's not even mad at them. And Jim wasn't even offended by the couple with the dog. He told me that he missed the dog, not the people who wanted to adopt him. I'd like to have a dog too, but I can't. If we get a dog, he won't be able to visit us. But it would be better if he didn't just visit us sometimes, but moved into our house, and we were like brothers. Alex pondered. In the evening, Anna told her husband the story Brianna had shared with her. Robert, can you imagine how cruel people can be? There were 5 families, and all of them kicked the boy out. I can't even imagine how much the poor child is suffering. We really need to be careful with him. When I talked to Brianna, I was horrified. Anna, calm down. We're not kicking Jim out. Besides, we're not going to adopt him. He just comes to visit Alex sometimes, and I'm sure he won't hurt our son. So let them be friends. Robert, that's not what I'm talking about. Brianna is an experienced woman, and I'm sure she saw a lot of different cases at the orphanage. I'm not afraid that Jim will hurt our son, but I am afraid that the poor orphan will expect from us more than we can give him, and then he'll be disappointed and suffer again. Come on. Jim is a child, but he's not stupid. He understands everything. I don't think he expects anything special from us after everything he's been through. So hopefully, we won't be the cause of any more disappointments. But is it okay that we are taming him? I mean, he's already so attached to our family and our home. Anna asked excitedly. What do you mean we are taming him? He is not an animal. You know, I think you're more attached to this kid than he's attached to you. Maybe you really want to adopt him. Yes, I want to adopt him, Robert. Anna replied sincerely. I don't see any other way out, because if one day he realizes that we will never become his family, he will stop communicating with Alex, and in this case, our son will suffer too. After all, you can see that Alex has grown attached to Jim too. They are almost like brothers. Maybe you are right. Honestly, I've also grown attached to him, and I'd like our son to continue to be friends with him. So I guess we need to do something about it. We can offer him lunch and help him with homework, but that's not what Jim needs. In order to remain friends with him, we have to become family. Financially, it's not a problem for us, and we have a big house. There's enough room for everyone. But will we be able to get used to the constant presence of a second child who is not our biological son? But you can love not only relatives. You and I love each other. But years ago, we were strangers to each other, too. I can't say that I already love Jim as much as Alex. Maybe I'll never love him as much as my own son. But I do care about that boy, and I don't want to hurt him with everything I do. I mean, we're already acting like he's a member of our family. We're already playing with his feelings, you know. But Jim didn't have any hopes. He really liked to spend time at Alex's house. His parents were friendly and kind, but he realized that it would be stupid to hope for anything. The boy had too many downfalls in his life. He just didn't allow himself to hope for anything, and he didn't even allow himself to dream. One day, Brianna decided to talk to him about his friendship with Alex and whether he was hoping for something more. Jim was silent for a long time and stared unhappily out the window. And then he said, "I've decided not to visit them anymore. Honestly, I became very attached to them, but I realized that it won't lead to anything good. I think they don't like it either, that I visit them so often. It's like I'm living with them, but I'm not. That's why I'd rather stop communicating with them than wait for them to kick me out. It's less painful that way. You know, maybe Alex doesn't even consider me his friend. Maybe he just feels sorry for me. I mean, we're in different schools now, and he has many friends, but I don't have anyone. Yeah, this kid is incredibly wise for his age." Brianna thought with a sigh. "You know, Jim, if you feel something like that, you're probably right. You don't have to wait for any hints. You don't have to wait for them to directly forbid you to visit them. Except I don't know how to tell Alex about it without offending him." The boy said, "Don't tell him anything. Next time he invites you to visit, tell him you can't. You have a lot of things to do at the orphanage. And it won't be a lie, because we always ask you to help kids who aren't good at math. Plus you can join the chess club or the book club that holds meetings twice a week in our library. You can visit him sometimes, but not too often. That way you can keep in touch with your friend without annoying his parents." Jim followed Brianna's advice and no longer visited Alex's house. Now they saw each other at the orphanage or in the park. He began to refuse Alex's invitations, saying that he was busy. At first, Alex took it normally, but after a while, he couldn't understand what was going on. "Are you offended or what? My parents ask why you don't visit us. They think we had a quarrel." Alex asked in confusion. "Come on. I have nothing to be offended about. I'm just really busy. I'm helping the younger kids at the orphanage with mathematics. I'll visit you tomorrow if you invite me over. Honestly, I miss your parents too." Jim really missed Alex's house and his family. He felt like it was almost his home. It scared the boy. He didn't want new trials and failures. Alex's parents understood that the boys didn't have any quarrels, and they immediately realized why Jim wasn't visiting them. "Anna, we have to do something about this," the head of the family said. "Let's go and talk to the manager of the orphanage. We need to adopt Jim." Time passes. The boy is already 10 years old, and he understands everything. "We plan to go to the sea this summer, but we can't take him with us since officially we are strangers." "Yes, I'll go to the orphanage tomorrow and talk to Brianna. I'll ask her what papers we need to provide to adopt him. I don't think they'll reject us." The next day, Alex's dad and mom were already sitting in Brianna's office telling her about their decision to adopt Jim. "I've gotten so attached to him. He hasn't visited us in a week, and I'm already nervous and worried about him. Sometimes I feel like we have always had two sons in our family." Anna said confidently. "Let's ask Jim himself what he thinks about it." At this age, children can already make their own decisions. The boy was called into the manager's office, and Brianna asked him, "Jim, would you be willing to try to be someone's son again? Not to try, but to become our son. There's no way we're giving up on you. You're almost a family member already. Right, Jim?" Anna exclaimed. "Yes, I agree." The boy smiled. "I truly believe that this time everything will be fine. So a new family will be your birthday present," Brianna said. "Yes, tomorrow is my 11th birthday," Jim confirmed. "Great. I guess that's a sign from the universe. Tomorrow you can start a new life. Tomorrow we'll have a big celebration at home," the head of the family said. "I think I even know what you would like to see on a plate at the holiday dinner." Anna smiled through tears. "Not on a plate, but on a frying pan. I would like to have a big pan of French fries." Jim laughed and headed home together with his new parents. Where Alex was waiting for him, he was no longer a friend, but already a brother.